Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar with a very, very promising title, Disruptive Tech and Pharma, How to Implement Today's Technologies for Tomorrow's Success in the APAC region and beyond. I'm Julia Sadka, Head of Public Relations at Viseven. I will be your host and moderator today, so feel free to submit all your questions for our experts during the webinar. I promise to get to them towards the end of the session, but if something comes up during the session, please submit your questions via our GoToWebinar section. Today, we'll talk about the evolution and creation of pharma, important subjects that I feel need to be addressed. We'll talk about pharma marketing in the APAC region specifically. We'll also talk about some of the myths and reality that's associated with the APAC region. We'll talk about the role of modular content. I feel like that's a very hot topic these days. And the future, full of tips and tricks. We'll get our experts to share their tips and tricks with us for the webinar session. And as I mentioned, Q&A session towards the end of our webinar. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce our speakers today. We have with us Nataliya Andreychuk. She's the CEO of Viseven, a pharma tech agency. Nataliya, hello. I'd love to tell you just a tad bit more about Nataliya for those who are not familiar. Nataliya is the CEO of Viseven, as I had mentioned, a global pharma tech agency that provides MarTech services for top 100 pharma companies in more than 50 countries around the world. Nataliya is one of the leaders in implementing new approaches to digital pharma marketing. She has been in the industry for over 15 years, and among Viseven's clients are, biggest pharma companies around the globe. So I'm very glad to have her on board with us. We also have Dr. Geetha Thiagarajan, Chief Technology Officer for Life Sciences and Healthcare, growth segment of Tata Consultancy Services. Geetha, welcome. She has been with TCS for about 15 years as well as just as long as Nataliya, which is a very interesting fact of what we said, for about 15 years now. And she has been the CTO for Middle East and Africa prior to this role. Geetha has a doctorate in renewable energy from Indian Institute of Technology. She has been an academic before joining TCS and has several publications, has granted patents to her name. She's currently based in Frankfurt. Puneet Srivastava, who is the head of digital content and services lab at Roche. Puneet, welcome to the webinar. Puneet has joined Roche in 2021 and has been responsible to mature the content capability. Before joining Roche, Puneet has been working at Bayer as a director of content strategy for their omni-channel marketing campaign program. Puneet has lived and worked in 6 different countries and has worked in various functions and brings 20 years of experience. Puneet is currently based out of Germany, but during the week he can be found in Basel, Switzerland. So if you're there, catch Puneet there in Switzerland. Rabheru, Head of Marketing, Agency Services, Life Sciences, and Healthcare at Tata Consultancy Services. Jay, welcome to the webinar session. Jay is the Head of Marketing and Creative Agency Services for over 15 years now. He has vast industry experience. Jay works with clients to create market-leading commercial and user experience strategies that deliver value for stakeholder patients. He is a technology enthusiast and a commercial transformation leader. Whew, that was a mouthful, but let's kick things off. Jay, I'm going to start out with you since your intro was last. Let's talk about pharma marketing today. We're going to talk about the evolution of it. How has it evolved over time? And what do you see as the natural progression for the industry on a global level, and specifically for the APAC market?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks very much, Julia, for the intro. Great topic. And I think one of the kind of the biggest themes in this space that characterizes the look and feel of pharma marketing today is the saturation of multi-channel marketing strategy over the past 15 years, but also the maturing state of omni-channel marketing. So what this means is we're no longer finding that marketing is just a case of utilizing various different channels of engagement and hoping that that's a good enough experience, because that's what multi-channel marketing was focused with. Now the experiences need to be orchestrated across channels. So we expect that journeys should be started in one place, continued in another, and ended, if you like, in another place. And that's what true omni-channel experience is. The end user demands that they get that seamless experience across the channels. So this shift from multi-channel to omni-channel has really sort of symbolized the change in recent times, accelerated by new technologies such as AI. And the other thing that we need to recognize is that so much of the target audience for pharma marketeers is that the consumers and customers are also customers of services from Amazon and Google and Facebook and others. And consequently, they expect a level of service from their pharma ecosystem also. And so in those other industries like retail, finance, travel maybe, the customer demands to pull the right experience when it suits them rather than have it pushed to them. And how often do we react to spam emails to meet our needs rather than looking in places that we trust or asking people that we know for advice? So it's not really workable anymore to not offer that level of flexibility and personalization. So that's where pharma is responding. And obviously a recent pandemic has accelerated that a bit more. So that's required a certain standard from a digital experience.
I love the fact that you brought up everything that we're going to talk about today, Jay, in the first answer. Definitely, we're talking about, personalization and customization. Geetha, I would love to hear your thoughts on the evolution of pharma. But does customer truly run the show in terms of, being so much focused on personalization and, being there for the taking, so to speak?
So thanks, Yulia, for the question. Customers always run their show. There's no doubt about it. But what we are increasingly seeing now is the need for customers, and this is across domains, not necessarily pharma alone, the need for customers to forge an ecosystem of partnerships so that they can innovate at scale. They can innovate at scale and be at par with the market and do their job effectively. So this is what we are seeing. And if you look at pharma business in particular, the pharma business has been traditionally a little closed to forming partnerships. But you look at their value chain now, right from AI-based drug discovery to running virtual cohorts for clinical trials, to doing continuous manufacturing instead of batch manufacturing, to launching a project effectively, to doing real-world evidence. There is technology penetration all along the value chain. And so it makes a lot of sense for pharma customers to have technology partners with them rather than reinventing all of this. And that is exactly what we are seeing. As technology partners, we are seeing a lot of opportunities across the value chain. If I want to, deep dive on pharma marketing in particular, which is the topic for today, what we have been seeing traditionally in pharma marketing is medical reps talking to HCPs or e-detailers on mobile devices or branded websites. But what are we talking now? We are talking now about targeted messages to HCPs. Can it be done on a segment of one basis? We are talking about having digital assistants, self-service digital assistants. Then there are patient support programs run for medical adherence. Then if you look at specialty pharmacy, it is having a limited but complex audience of HCPs, payers, regulators. So all of these evolutions needs targeted messaging, personalized messaging, messaging across different channels. This kind of personalization is probably not the core business for pharma. There's no point in reinventing these things, putting efforts into it. So that is where partnership makes a lot of sense, and it is actually happening. Back to you, Ilya.
Thank you so much, Geetha, for that answer. Puneet, I would like to talk to you about approaches and how they changed in terms of, disruption in the few last years, or so to speak, and especially in terms of the area of HCP engagement. Bring that into the conversation, please.
So I think, first of all, thank you so much for this webinar. I'm pleased to sharing stages with all of you. I think if you look at the pharmaceutical or in customer in general, the change was already happening. I think there was a kind of a very strong need for the tech companies or for pharma companies to actually look at that change. And the change I'm talking about is the attention span was basically reducing. The people are looking for consuming content across channels. They are not actually bothered whether you send an email or you put a Twitter. As I think one of my panelists said in the beginning, that you have to be very consistent across these channels. The customers, and this change was happening over last 5-7 years. What pandemic has actually done, this has fast forwarded most of these things which pharma was actually planning to do. I mean, if you look at it, a typical pharma business model, a few years ago, we were actually so much, and still in some companies and some areas, we are very much face-to-face interaction is our main mode of, selling our drugs or go-to-market model. Now, this, with the pandemic, the whole access to the healthcare ecosystem was limited or even blocked. We could not even reach to our doctors. Now, this has given us back that, hey guys, you have to respond very quickly and fast, that, hey, how can you actually get into remote engagements, etc. Look at all the digital channels you have and how can you orchestrate this. So the pharma, the debate has changed completely from shall we do digital versus how fast can we get into this digital omni-channel. So there was no debate in the pharma leadership across the pharma companies that shall we invest or not. It's basically how much we invest to get it better than others. Now, when you actually do these things, the expectation what you are trying to match up with, as I think again Jay mentioned, that these are the same people who are experiencing Amazons, Googles, etc., who are giving you at one click, to buy things, one click to get your information, and then it comes to pharma experience where you have to match those expectations. So their expectations from pharma companies is like tenfold, that, hey, give me something extremely personalized. Do not actually bother me with a bombarded with an email chain, etc., which you think is right, but rather look at understand me better so that you can actually talk to me in a way which helps. Now, this is all, even now, if you look at an additional aspect, this new generation which is coming up, the doctors, I mean, we have some kind of interviews with them. They are even looking for much more advanced things, that, hey, give me on-call service, etc. That, hey, can I actually have this information? And they're looking for a response time of like 2 hours, 4 hours, that, hey, can you actually give me this information right there? I think we are executing those things and we are learning as we are doing. But what I want to highlight, that there are so many different elements to make such a thing work. And I believe the tech backbone, as the topic of the today, is going to be a fundamental also enabler to make such a thing happen from a pharma company perspective.
Puneet,
otherwise we will basically be not available.
Thank you so much for that answer. That's where I want to bring in Nataliya to talk about the tech aspect of things, and measuring the impact of the evolution, and talking about the best approaches. Puneet had mentioned that doctors and CPs nowadays want to have very, very fast response time, 2 to 4 hours. That's it. They don't have time for more. So I'd like you to talk about implementing new approaches, and how do you personally achieve these great things ahead for the industry? Nataliya, we can't hear you. Can't hear you. Having slight technical difficulties. Bear with us for a moment. Should be able to. No, it came in for a second and that's it. There we go. Nataliya, say something. Your microphone is on. How about we give it a try? I'm gonna hopefully, Nataliya, disconnect and connect again, and we'll get back to that question in a moment. I'd like to pick up on that conversation in terms of, as Puneet had mentioned, the fact that new approaches and new things. So Puneet, I'm gonna follow up with that thought and talk about the approach, modular approach, in the grand scheme of things for pharma in late 2022 heading into 2023 now. What are the changes, and how do you implement approaches that some find controversial, some find them too difficult, some find them too simple? So how do you balance that and navigate that field?
I think it's a great question, and I think as I said, the tech backbone is important, but there are certain things which are, if you look at a pharma transformation at the moment, you go to any of the companies and my peers in the different companies who are sitting, we chat about it. Every company is having a digital roadmap that, hey, how they would like to actually go into this personalized customer engagement of the future. Some call it slightly differently, others, but everybody's mission is to actually meet the customer needs, right? Now, and one of the element which is consistently coming across these is about content, and not only content, they call it modular content. And honestly, if you ask me, if I ask my 10 colleagues in pharma company outside, they will actually give 11 different understanding of modular content. I think modular content, or the content as such, is extremely important enabler of this personalized customer engagement. The thing which I sometimes disagree that it's the only thing which can help you and get in your omni-channel experience. This is one of the enablers. I believe that technology together with this content topics can actually make the difference if you actually orchestrate many different things. I mean, I named something like marketing strategy. What's your marketing strategy looks like? Your testing framework. I can actually generate hundreds and hundreds of modules in an organization, but then if I do not have a testing framework, I go and test those modules. Coming that, hey, if should I go back to data analytics? There is no data analytics to tell you your testing framework is working or not working, what will happen? So, you know, all these things have to come together in sync to actually give you this whole end goal, which you are actually trying to achieve with your customers. I must highlight that all these things orchestrated, but if you have not the right people and team ready for that orchestration, it's going to be difficult. And here I'm actually talking about the inertia which is available in the organization that, hey, I have been doing things differently in the past. Now, why do I have to change? So you need to actually be able to bring that topic quite strong as well. I hope that helps in terms of
welcome
where.
Back. I see that her camera is on. We still can't hear you for some unknown reason. Something's off with the audio, even though it says Nataliya's microphone is on. So perhaps there could be an issue with the headphones or whatnot. I don't know. But I'd love to bring in Nataliya for the modular conversation. If not, we'll try to fix it during the webinar, and hopefully she'll get back to us in a second. There could be an issue. I'm gonna try to address it in a second as well. Jay, let's bring you to the conversation.
Do you think
talking
it is an
from
issue
how to
now?
navigate the playing field. There is no issue. Yeah, Nataliya is with us. Everything's excellent. Okay.
I'm
Jay,
sorry. That was a go-to-webinar issue, actually. I'm sorry for that. So
that's all
I'm
right.
happy you can hear me.
Yes, we're very happy to hear you, Nataliya. I'm glad that you were finally sorted out the issue with the audio. Jay, hold your thought. I'm going to put things in perspective with Nataliya. Puneet started talking about modular approach and, implementing it, addressing it, etc. So I'd like you to talk about, the many struggles that pharma continues to face, not just in the APAC region, but all over the world in terms of implementation, and how do you fix that? How do you take something and run with it?
Yeah, that's a very great question. I would say like no one fixed completely the problem yet. So we ensuring we are all in progress. We are all in process of working with it, right? So, and that's very great that you already started to work to talk about the content, because content here is the key. Content ideally is to serve and to service this approach of omni-channel and personalization, because it's kind of the automation how we want our brands to become closer to the consumers. And pharma is not unique in this, because we do have even more obligation to make our brands closer to the customers, because this is not just the question of liking or non-liking, it is a question of life and well-being. That's why it is so important. Then the question of content is also extra important, because then this service machine which is built around our content must be very adjusted to all the omni-channel strategy we have. And here, having, like you understand, in the past, we had the content used like in the complete document, which was tagged, and all the metadata was related to the complete document without recognizing the different pieces and bits in it, like meaningful pieces, right? So that's really difficult today to take outside of this document kind of the data we need to each and every person who will be consuming it separately. So here the modular approach comes, and here we need to understand that going into the modular approach, we have a lot of homework to do, a lot of housekeeping to do. So we are not only applying the whole new way where we create chunked, structured, well-categorized content where we have to tag it manually or automatically. We create a whole taxonomy structure and whole governance around that. We have to do all of this housekeeping to connect the dots and to make sure our content is machine readable, and then all the technology will be applied on it, because if it is not machine readable, then the problem of I would say scaling of all of this approach would be the biggest what we will receive, because no one is doubting today the fact that we all can try modular content, we all can build a module, we understand that it is a meaningful piece with which has no format, we can be used across the channels, but once we decide to scale it, we all understand that it has to be machine readable, and we have to go from there to imply every technology we have. And sorry, Jay, for cutting you off. If you want to continue this topic, so please.
Nataliya, thank you so much. Jay, I'd like you to follow up on that topic, talk about, not just navigating the playing field when it comes to implementation of modular or omnichannel approach or any other approach, but talk about the region specifically. What has been your experience in addressing some of the issues head on?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. So look, when we consider Asia Pacific, the first thing that we need to do is recognize the nature of the region. This is the sheer size and diversity is something that is vastly different. We're often comparing pharma marketing strategy between US and Europe, from kind of one culture, language, almost kind of geography or healthcare system, to a multi-language, multi-culture, multi-regulatory, multi-data privacy, language, cultural, whatever you name it. And then you actually take Asia Pacific and it's multiple times more complex, right? The languages, the cultures, everything from socioeconomic factors to geographical factors, even healthcare systems. And the population is aging, right? So chronic diseases is becoming a far more important topic in Asia Pacific as before. And even within Asia Pacific, you can segment into two groups. You can have emerging markets and developed markets, right? So even within Asia Pacific, there are so many different ways of segmenting the market for a modular approach. So in that sense, when you take the global approach, right, the local approach to a global strategy, it really requires understanding all of those factors before you think about moving towards modular content. So that's the first thing that we need to recognize. The second thing is navigating the playing field in Asia Pacific for modular content specifically. One thing that we need to remember is that a lot of the content that we look to deploy needs to be mobile ready, right? A huge proportion of the region are mobile users, and not only is it one of the best ways for communication and to obtain content and communicate, it's also often the first impression, right? And as we know, first impressions count, right? And so if it's good, that might be the start of a journey. If it's not so good, that's the end of that journey. So when you consider the breadth and the variation of the content that's going to be required to properly market in the Asia Pacific region, pharma needs to be able to create material quickly, right? It needs to be able to repurpose content, repurpose modules. It needs to be able to respond to market conditions that will change rapidly and rapidly across countries, not just from an initial design perspective, but also from a review and a reuse perspective. So, content has to have the adaptability to be quickly repurposed, which is where modular content could be, ready fit tool for that region. And one of the best ways to think about how this can be so valuable is to think about the content marketing value chain within your organization, right? So, if I had to ask you, what does that process look like within your organization from the point that it's an idea in your brand manager's eye to the point that it's consumed by the person that you intend it to be consumed by, or ignored, maybe? For many organizations, and for many organizations that we speak to, it's a long, unwieldy, complex process with multiple parties, internal and external, and it's incredibly difficult to explain, let alone measure, right? So that's why we kind of work with all of these top pharma organizations to develop the KPIs that are driving them to change that. And so speed to market is the one that comes up as the #1 KPI. So how long does it take for that process end to end? And that even ranks above things like cost efficiency. So when you think about it, pharma companies, despite all of these cost pressures, despite all these internal and external pressures, what they're still trying to do is get content out faster. And to do that, modular content is one of the best tools that you have in your tool belt, right? And the second piece is to move towards a factory model whereby you can start utilizing scale and efficiency to get that modular content out quickly at a high level of quality and can be repurposed when your market requires it to.
Jay, thank you so much for that answer. Geetha, I'm going to jump into a slightly different direction here. We touched on it in the beginning, talked about the pandemic and how it impacted how we approach things and how we work with the market and how we develop new approaches to new things. So, Geetha, in retrospect, what role? Yes. Can't hear me.
I think Puneet can have a comment, right, Puneet?
Puneet, jump into the conversation. I'd love to have a comment from you.
Yes, I just want to reflect on Jay very quickly. Yeah, so I think, Jay, I think I totally agree to your point of view. We need to supply content, etc. The reflection I had from my previous experience in my previous role, we were working for a country, let's not name the country. We had some external regulatory authorities, which is extremely strict, that you cannot just post a piece of content without them approving it. And there are 4 or 5 of them in the whole world. What happened was that, yes, everybody was saying content is the blocker, and we were actually spending a lot of effort. And I think Nataliya and team were also part of that discussions when eVisit was there. We actually were able to create like multiple variations of a single e-detailer, which was like 15 pages. And we create like, if you actually do compliantly, we can create 153 versions of it. Safety first, efficacy later, safety, efficacy going together. And you create those modular stories. We were ready. We got the external authorities also to approve that stuff for us in a kind of a business rules format as the new model approach. But what we have found out is that there was no testing framework available to do actually all 163 variations going to the market, because the touch point we had was like 3 emails in a month. And now I have those variations available, but I do not have the opportunity to go to the healthcare professional and test and learn like we can do in other sectors. So, there are, I think modular content, yes, we have to actually be ready for supplying it, but we have to also find out opportunities where that there is some kind of a framework needs to be adjusted, adopted across channels. As you mentioned, I really like the omni-channel that, hey, if I cannot send an email, can I put it on social? Can I put it on somewhere else? To find out and collect those data points and test it. So that's what I'm saying, that it all has to come together if you want to be successful.
I want to support. Yes, Julia, sorry, I want to support.
I'd love the conversation.
Yeah, Puneet's point, because this testing framework wasn't there yet, and this coming to the question of the business case. But this is the most important principles we need to talk about, talking about modular. So once we create this module, we have to imply the mechanism when this module created once, this is updated once and retired only once. That means the module has meaning, it's a meaningful piece, it's completely properly tagged, categorized, structured, but it is really reused, it's not multiplied, it's reused, and it is machine readable. That means this mechanism of testing that is not depending on human efforts, because whatever offering tool, like we are at Viseven, we are having offering solution which is well connected. Still, we are working on AI possibilities and partnering with Amazon, making sure like we can deliver a solution highly automated, which is automating also this piece of work, while publishing testing framework is not a human power issue. Because I know Geetha also faces this a lot, because like once we are talking about digital content factory, which is human really based, so that's where we start to see the problems of modular content scale, right? So because if we test all of that variation, so that probably will not work. Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you, Nataliya. That's where I want to bring Geetha into the conversation as well, to talk about, you know, the changing landscape of
Let me just
digital
continue
marketing
with
approach.
the conversation.
Yes, let's talk about the subject.
See, while I'm listening to you experts here talking about modular content, the challenges, the testing, and all of that, I'm at a different level, right? I'm not an expert looking at this particular field, but rather I'm a CTO across the life sciences segment. So I just want to take a step back and give you a perspective of how I see it at a level before, which is just not technology driven and its challenges, but it is more the sentiment or the purpose behind why we are doing all of this, right? So, and that is your question also, Yulia, about the pandemic. Now, what we are seeing post-pandemic as a pharma product launch strategy is healthcare has gone online, right? All your healthcare professionals, their time they spend with patients, the time they spend with medical reps, all of this has reduced. The time taken for any approval, be it regulatory, be it payer, be it healthcare technology assessor, that has increased. Accessing the market has become difficult. Real world evidence is asked. Amidst all of these things, for a healthcare professional to either switch to another product or to adopt a new product, his bandwidth is completely stretched. I think this is what we have to understand from, you know, if I take a step back and look at the sentiment, like how I started, how the patient journey has changed, how the healthcare professionals' working practice has changed. What is that the regulators and payers are expecting? So in the content has to create product awareness rather than getting caught in the sales cycle. The content has to be helpful. And that is where making it modular, getting it at speed, and all that you spoke about makes a lot of sense. But unless we step back and understand the change in the journey we are talking about, we'll be caught in some technology cycle.
Geetha, thank you so much for that. I love the fact that you talked about, you know, the sentiment and how ultimately something makes somebody feel, right? Not just the sales perspective. And Nataliya talked about that a while back in a different webinar that we had. So I'd like to follow up on that thought and talk about, you know, intelligent content and intelligent engagement and, you know, some of the business cases that you've had in the past, Nataliya, but also bring up, you know, that aspect of a personable approach and making sure that, you know, it's not just a general sales pitch when it comes to the APAC market. What's important for the general audience there. I'm actually going to bring in a quick poll for our audience right now. I'm going to ask them what they think are the most common myths associated with APAC. We'll get back to that a little bit later on. But Nataliya, I'd love to hear about some of the business cases that you have.
Yeah, it's very important that we have not only, you know, hypotheses, but we also come to the reality, have some success in the field. So let us think about what we can count as success in omni-channel engagement, in personalization, if we're working with in pharma, right? So one of our business cases where we started the omni-channel project, and we unleashed three new channels with the modular content just in the beginning of this year, was connected to orphan disease. And you know, like the outcome of hybrid communication, because I want also to support Geetha's speech and say like content is a servant of automation, but it is also a bridge between one of the most empathetic channels, which is face-to-face, and between the online digital communication. Going into omni-channel paradigm, we have to be sure like we can connect both data from the in fields, face-to-face activities, and digital data. And this is one of the crucial tasks for most of the organization and for our customers, where today we see most of B2B businesses, it is a challenge in connection of these approaches. But while we have this connected, I would say one of the outcomes I want to share from omnichannel engagement and personalization within this project for orphan disease, we have registered several new patients who were not discovered before. We have been connected with the doctors in the hybrid way. So there were still the face-to-face visits, and we started a campaign. And during that campaigns, this happened, so these patients were diagnosed, and that was really this very rare disease. So that's really was amazing fact, which is showing us the importance for pharma going into omni-channel and personalization, because as I mentioned in the beginning, it is not like the other business where it is only the matter of commercial surviving of organization. It is a matter of our well-being, because if we connect our pharma brands with the clients who need us, so then this is where we are working and what we are fighting for. So it's beyond the pill, beyond the commercial effort. It's about life and about how we work with it. And yes, content is an important glue for every technology we will be using for this approach. This is to the statement of the technology across all the engagements, what doctor use at his office, what patient used while searching for his diagnosis, what we are using in the clinical trials. The only thing which is remain stable is content. It is an asset. Content is an important asset which should be recruited in this omni-channel personalization journey to make sure we succeed. That's why modular content is so important, and scaling of this approach is extra important for every one of us. Because if we recruit it correctly, so we all win.
Speaking of winning and recruiting it correctly, Jay, can you jump in here and talk about, the region, digital maturity of it, being ready for implementation of different approaches, including modular, and just your overall thoughts on how to work in the region as a whole. And we'll get back to that poll result in a second, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, sure. I think I mentioned before about the kind of the widespread use of mobile. I think that similar trend towards adoption of other technologies in that space are the same, are very similar, right? So, for example, one of the things that content marketers need to be aware of, just as an example, is this elimination of cookies for tracking and personalization, right? So, I think one of the general things, a general comment, is that this is going to have an impact on how pharma marketers use content and how they track its performance and how to follow up on that, right? Because that's what personalization is, right? And now, as we mentioned before, when you're in Asia Pacific, where you have this vast variation across the region about effectively personas, demographics, segments, it's so vast. That's going to be kind of a key aspect, which is based on kind of this new wave of implementation of data privacy regulations. So similar to GDPR in Europe, you see countries like China and Japan have also adopted similar guidelines, right? So what does this mean when it comes to taking content, taking modular content, taking any type of content strategy and making it effective in the region or in a country with these changes that are on the horizon, whether it's data privacy, whether it's technological changes such as the cookies I mentioned, but also the massive explosion in use of social media in the region, right? So the other thing that we have to remember is that in Asia Pacific, social media influencers are having a greater impact on what prescriptions are prescribed. So non-qualified primary care practitioners are having an influence on prescription. That's the big thing, right? If you consider the growth of social media. So, you know, exactly as I think Nataliya was saying, like, it's an asset. It's a massive asset. It can be a huge force for good if used appropriately. And as a result, that content marketing could be a massively powerful tool in a pharma company's commercial strategy. And similar to what Geetha was mentioning is where you've got the maturing level of technologies such as AI and machine learning and all of those types of things, they're also quite commonplace in Asia Pacific. Now, there is a big difference between the high adopters and the almost no adopters in the region, but there's a growing acceptance to make content automation a standard, making it standard. So from a TCS perspective, you know, we get to see, you know, requests for things like next best experience, you know, chatbots, all of these types of tools that employ smart automation to make that experience better, quicker, faster, all of those sorts of things. And so this kind of demand for a unique position in the Asia Pacific region is only growing and is raising the standard, you know, day by day. So it's kind of just really, it really defines the fact that the region as a whole really needs a tailored approach. And for example, so, you know, we talked about modular content already, but all of these other partner technologies, partner tools, partner processes, they all go hand in hand to create a really tailored approach for the region, and we should take advantage of that.
Thank you, Jay, for that answer. Geetha, I'm going to go to you to follow up on that thought. How do you marry, you know, the perfect tools, the perfect approach, the perfect content, and to make sure that you get the results that you want to see in the region? Talk to us a bit more about that in your perspective.
So if you're looking at results, if you're looking at tangible outcomes, then your input has to be tangible. And I think Nataliya referred to the word asset, and Jay also alluded to it. Content has to be considered as a business asset by itself with a measurable ROI. That is very important. And once we consider it as a business asset, then all your tangible outcomes and everything will fall in place. So every bit, you are speaking about modular content, let us say a table, a text, or whatever it is. If that particular component is pre-approved, it's like a factory approach. Jay spoke about factory approach. So if you have pre-approved components and you can mix and match, retrieve, reuse, assemble them, and using that assembly, you create a composite which then goes out as your story, then your entire regulatory cycle comes down. But to do this, it is just not about technology alone, right? Your regulators, your commercial department, your marketing department, all of them have to work in collaboration. Today, they are working in a waterfall method. So one is the technology of modular content and how well you're going to do it, intelligence behind it, content management. Second is bringing all of these parties together who are traditionally in a waterfall way of thinking to work and collaborate together. So both of these aspects has to come together if you want to see tangible outcomes from our whatever we are talking about it now. Over to you, Julia.
I was having some technical difficulties for a moment. Thank you, Geetha, for that answer. I appreciate it. And Puneet, I don't know whether he's with us or not, but I wanted to talk about the poll results that came in. And over 62% of our audience think that everything has to be in person in the APAC region. About 8% think there is not enough data when it comes to the region and working in there. About also 8% think there is a lack of talent, of local talent specifically. And about 23% think there is not enough desire to adopt new approaches. So who's going to take this question while Puneet reconnects to us? Perhaps Nataliya, Jay, or Geetha. I'd like to talk about, you know, those results and what do we do with it? How do we break that myth that everything has to be in person when it comes to working in APAC?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there, Julia. So I think Yeah, I think, just related to this topic. So we were just talking about the technology side and how much it would be great if we could utilize them where it makes sense, right? It's not a silver bullet that's going to fix everything. And as Puneet was saying as well, I think earlier that there has been this kind of standard mode of engagement, which has to be face to face. Or the other one is email, right? Because how long has email been around? So, pharma is really comfortable in sending out a lot of emails. This is just your standard approach. But moving away from that, we have to use, just like in every other use case, we have to use technology to augment our approach and not replace it, right? So there's going to be no situation where a pharma organization purely relies on technology to engage with physicians or customers or whatever it is, because people are complex, right? They're rich, they have good days, bad days, they have different opinions, they're complex, they're rich. And as good as the machine learning algorithm we want to create, and we could create the best in the world, it still won't be perfect in dealing with a human, right? So the best tool that we have is a well-equipped brand marketeer augmented by good technology.
Jay, thank you so much for that answer. I had some technical difficulties for a moment, but Nataliya, can you follow up and then we'll give Puneet the opportunity to answer his question.
Just one single comment to Jay's statement. So we also need to be focused on value we are bringing with the omni-channel component into our face-to-face engagement, because everything which is close to us about the brands, about our life, is bringing values in our life. So let's talking about value when we have this hybrid approach, like face-to-face plus omni-channel digital, then we have to be laser focused on values. So what value we are bringing into our day-to-day communication with this particular healthcare professional, or what value receive our patients. So if we value focused, then all of our problems like lack of professionals we can fix by recruitment, and today we are working online mostly, so we can fix it by hiring, by finding specialists overseas, talking about the APAC regions. Once we are thinking about the difficulties of adopting these new methods, we will also focus on change management and get sales people in the fields weaponized or get them empowered. So they have to receive the data which makes sense for them, and they have to be empowered with this data to bring value in their relationships with HCP. And then we will be able to connect the dots between our face-to-face and digital. Thank you very much. Up
Nataliya.
to
Nataliya, thank you. Puneet, jump in.
Nailed it, Nataliya. I think we're in between off when I was talking about it. Technology is very important. We have to continuously invest in technologies. No second thoughts there. But change management is equally important. Unless both comes together, you will be doing a lot of academia work, which is not translating into any value. Yeah, sorry, Yulia, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Geetha, and thank you for jumping in and following up. Puneet, I'd like you to join the conversation as well and talk about, the difficulties that may be associated, as our viewers had said, that everything has to be in person, and they're just, perhaps no desire to adopt new approaches in the region as much as there would be elsewhere. So talk to us a little bit about that as well.
I think, guys, I have some difficulties with internet. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
I'm also having difficulties with the internet for some unknown reason, but
you're not, okay. But at least you can hear me. So I think the point here is, we have, if you look at our beliefs in the past, we actually have not believed that we can actually do a video call with someone sitting in some part of the world. Now we can do it. So if somebody today says that, yes, face-to-face is the only way to go, I said just give us some time, because things are changing, guys. before pandemic, entire pharma, the most senior leaders of the pharma actually in Europe or in Americas were saying the same thing, that, hey, we have to be face to face. And the pandemic has taught that things can work remotely. So I slightly disagree. I mean, I agree that yes, face to face is extremely important, but it is the only way to go 5 years down the line. I don't know. I mean, it could be. I would just say, give some time to this thinking and you will see that things are evolving. Today, the technology gives you, let's take option X. We may be using X minus 50% of it, but tomorrow if the technology grows, you will be able to visualize so many things and you will be able to do so many things with technology that the face-to-face is gonna be changing. I give you an example from Roche, which is, I think we are proud about it, that we have reduced our sales force drastically, right? We have not only reduced the sales force, but actually merged the sales force and medical forces together. And the reasoning behind is that we were actually encountering a difficulty that Roche, being such a huge organization, we were having so many molecules in single disease areas that we have reps going for each molecule, and we have 6 to 7 reps visiting the doctor from Roche, and the doctors were getting confused. Okay, so which molecule are you talking about? Now imagine Roche taking a step forward and saying, guys, let's create a kind of a primary point of contact for healthcare who talks about the disease area, not the product, but he has his digital backup and other things which he can actually support the healthcare professional needs digitally. So yes, the things are changing and evolving, that face-to-face is important, but face-to-face will gonna be taking a kind of a hybrid approach is what we see right now for the next 3 to 4 years. But I don't know the future beyond, and I think I'm not a futurist, but I see there's a lot gonna be changing in this world.
Geetha, I'm gonna bring you into that conversation on the future. We talked about it for quite some time in the conversation about, machine learning and AI. Is it going to be everywhere? I'm not asking you to predict things, but, talk about how you envision the industry in the next 5 or 10 years or so.
Yeah, I think several aspects of it has been touched so far, right? You spoke about modular content, targeted content, content at the right time, how to scale content. To do all of this, of course, AI techniques are coming handy even today. I'll come to the future, but even today, if you want to do social media listening, or if you want to understand who are the healthcare professionals, key opinion leaders, where, what message to send to them, when, and even authoring those messages, machine authoring those messages. All of these things, AI techniques are helping us today. But going forward, there is more we can do. One of the things where TCS is investing in, I just want to give an example, is AI-enabled digital twin for enterprise processes. These enterprise processes have multiple stakeholders, and if you want to roll out a strategy, it is best done through your experience or intuition and not so much data based, because the ecosystem is so diverse, you cannot get so much of data. So when you roll out such a strategy, whether the strategy wins or loses is anyone's best guess. Now, if we can build a business experimentation platform for this, if you can roll out a strategy, do a time tick simulation for weeks, months, and see how the strategy pans out in a market, and then go back and tweak your strategy, nothing like that. So we started looking at this along with one of our customers, first in the telecom department. And there we have really matured it. Now we are rolling out multi-million-dollar projects across telecom industry for their product launch strategy, for how they retain their customers and so on. After that, we have looked at supply chain scenarios across domains, and now we are repurposing this for pharma launch strategy. So potentially, this is where AI techniques can take us. Over to you, Yulia.
Thank you, Geetha. Nataliya, any thoughts on that? Obviously Geetha mentioned the test, a case that's specific to TCS, but perhaps you can talk about, what role will AI play in the big modular approach picture in the future? Talk to us a little bit about that. You had mentioned it throughout the webinar, but I'd like to sort of end on a high note.
Yeah, I think so that AI approach, like machine learning, will impact us as patients on our daily life, because in the future, we all as patients will take much more individual care on ourselves, right? We will be much more responsible on our own well-being, and being responsible, we have to receive the access, very easy access to very trustworthy information. So that means like all the big stakeholders like FDA and the others will be verifying the information which will come from pharma players. And in the end of the day, using modular approach, that means not only for the calls with HCP for medical or commercial purposes, it in the end of the day has to be much more accessible with, I would say, valuable, adaptable format for the patient. So like a patient, I must trust what I read from a pharma company, and I must have the access to only information which is valuable for me. So it means perhaps it will be augmenting, like Jay says, with some devices which will be I don't know, inbuilt into our skin, whatever. So but we are as patients will be having the access to the portions of information which are deliberately designed for us, and we will be having in those, you know, programmed chips, whatever, all the information about us, about our diagnosis, about our preferences, and having the entering to the internet. That means like the companies will be focusing on how to grab the attention of patient and save their life, literally. So, and this will be not any longer the fight of people. There will be fight of data, fight of content, fight of approaches, and we are heading over there. If we will be liking this, I don't know, because but I am sure we are enjoying the process.
Thank you for that, Nataliya. Speaking of enjoying the process, Jay, in the grand scheme of things, are we going to go the route of machine learning everything? You know, skin implanted devices, you know, perhaps our data is going to be all over, you know, a Black Mirror kind of situation there a little bit. But let's talk about that.
Yeah, it only feels that way sometimes, right? We're bombarded with all of these new technologies and new use cases of current technologies, and how everything's connected with the Internet of Things, and healthcare and patient diagnostics, all of the things are catching up. And there is going to be a point in the future, right, where your pharma marketing department has to open a new channel, has to, you know, there's email, there's web, there's face-to-face, there's e-detail, CLM, whatever, and then there'll be mixed reality, right? And mixed reality has got to take all of those things that Nataliya said, right? She was right, absolutely. You need data, you need diagnostics, you need person information, preference, behavior. And at some point, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that a patient visits their primary care physician in the metaverse. It's entirely feasible to going to the mixed reality being a channel, right? You have in your pharma marketing department, you have a mixed reality department, because they're responsible for delivering content in all of these augmented reality models. So machine learning, yeah, it's going to proliferate, right? And I gave one other bold opinion, which I admit is probably a slight overreach or a bit of an exaggeration, and I will share with you, because we're moving towards this future where departments of technology and marketing are moving closer and closer and closer together, right? If you think of pharma content strategy, you have to talk about branding and channel delivery. If you talk about social media community management, you have to talk about the messaging and the platform tool and the analytics, website development, journeys, and content management systems. So the bold opinion is there may be a point where pharma marketing, pharma organizations don't have a marketing and a technology department, they have a MarTech department, right? And now that's, again, probably slight overreach, but that just goes to show you how closely intertwined pharma marketing and technology is becoming. And you can see evidence of this already, right? There are lots of pharma organizations that have a team that sits outside IT, sits outside marketing. I've heard all kinds of fancy different names for them. Usually they're called digital, right? So you see organizations have chief digital officers as well as CMOs and CIOs. So it's certainly looking like a far more joined up future where machine learning and all of these other advanced technologies and maturing technologies take the stage in helping getting messaging and content through to the end users.
Thank you for that, Jay. Now that we're close to the end of our session, an hour flew by. Puneet, I'd like you to sort of sum it up for us in terms of technological solutions and digitalization for the industry, but specifically for the APAC region. You have a tad bit of time.
I think the few things which comes to my mind is there has to be, and I like what Jay was saying, that technology is going to be actually coming closer to MarTech. It's already happening, Jay, by the way. So there is a department like MarTech is already happening in our company as well. What I believe is that the technology enablers, there has to be a kind of a broader understanding and awareness has to take place in the organizations. What I have found is that most of these technology enablement or the digital transformation topic is done by a set of individuals, and then there's a business team. So whether it's a modular content, whether it's a next best action, there is a tech team or a digital team who's doing the stuff, and then it goes to the business. I think what the industry has to do is that bring these pieces together. Otherwise, if you are not the right people in those sessions, how will you actually manage the inertia which is existing in the organization to actually drive the change? And this is, I think we should respect that, the way things have been happening in the past, but we should also take them seriously that, hey guys, we would like to partner and work with you in order to make the shift. And these people, unless or until onboarded in the right way, I think pharma will not be able to transform. And I think this is what we are doing it very clearly, that we are bringing these people and folks together and giving them accountability that, hey, come and run this for us. We will be there at the back to orchestrate this, but you are the owner. You are the one who will be the hero. So that kind of shift has to happen if we really want to make this whole technology enablement of pharma organization to actually reach our personalized customer engagement with all the text incorporated at the same time, the people who are actually running the tech at the same time utilizing the tech.
Puneet, thank you so much for that answer. Again, an hour flew by. I didn't even notice how quickly the conversation went. So it was a great conversation, and hopefully our audience enjoyed it just as much as I have. I will definitely look forward to more sessions with you in the future. Thank you to all our experts. I think Geetha is having some technical difficulties, but Geetha Thiagarajan, there she is. She's back with us. Of TCS, Jay Rabheru of Tata Consultancy Services as well, Nataliya Andreychuk of Viseven, and Puneet Srivastava of Roche. Thank you again for your time. I'm Julia Sotska of Viseven as well. I hope to see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.